Call to order. Welcome to the April 17, 2018 meeting of the Lake Bluff Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. If we could have a roll call, please.
Certainly. Member Badger is absent. Member Burns is absent. Member Danley.
Here.
Member Miller.
Here.
We will come back to Member Murray. Member Russell.
Here.
Chair Peters.
Here.
Have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you. And for the record, Commissioner Murray is on the phone pursuant to our policy and is permitted to participate in this evening's meeting, barring any objection. Hearing none, we will proceed. Good evening, Mr. Murray.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Before we get into the non-agenda items, if there are any, would just like to thank Sam Badger for 12 years of exceptional service, starting with the Plan Commission and then proceeding into the Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. Sam brought to the committee just an excellent work ethic and tremendous professional expertise that I found to be invaluable when I was, as I said, on the committee. So we're going to miss Sam, but we wish him well and thank him for his 12 years of excellent service. All right. Non-agenda items and visitors. As there are no visitors present, we'll proceed to issue number 3, consideration of the March 20, 2019 PCZBA regular meeting minutes. Have the members had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Any proposed changes?
None? None.
Okay. Hearing none, could we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second.
Voice vote?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We will go out of order this evening because agenda item number 5 is a public hearing and the petitioner is not yet here. So why don't we have a staff report if we could, Mr. Cole?
Certainly. So a brief staff report this evening. You'll recall we had some discussion regarding the history of revisions to the L1 use table last month. So we didn't necessarily want to have a full discussion of that tonight, but wanted to give you some background to review. So there are some very limited selections of minutes that we've included in the packet. If anyone's interested in seeing a full set of any of those, you can just contact me directly. But just try to provide you with a brief summary of how that issue evolved over the span of about 2 years. So in short, there was the Waukegan Road Corridor Study. There was a discussion at that time, some apprehension about major changes to the use table. The Plan Commission and then the Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals, when it was formed, spent some time looking at these, and then that really turned into an examination of kind of the future of the L1 district and some sub-area planning. There was ultimately no comprehensive amendment out of that. There have been some piecemeal amendments over time. And then the last it shows up is right before we get into Stonebridge and the Block 3 discussion, I believe the elementary school discussion. So some of the very meaty subjects the PCZBA started to take on around, I believe, 2015 or so. Yeah, June 2015. So just an item for your interest.
Would it be appropriate to revisit that issue and perhaps explore possible additional permitted uses or however we would like their special uses?
Certainly, that would be, at this group's discretion to pursue, but we'd be happy to support that. You could look at, matching up the uses permitted in the central business district to these. You could look at more restructuring of the use table generally. There's a lot of approaches you could take, but we'd be happy to work with you on that.
Well, maybe it would be beneficial to at least look at the permitted uses in the CBD and explore whether or not many or all of those could be adopted in L1. It might just make for more efficiencies down the line.
And that would be, a relatively, I think, easy item for you to discuss and for us to prepare for you. So we'd be happy to bring that to you at your next meeting, even if you like.
Okay, I mean, barring,
Discussion item.
barring any objection?
Well, the only thought I had coming in is, yeah, I do think it would be in favor of reviewing all the uses in the L1, L2, and CBD district. And, you know, based upon past discussions, there seems to be a general sentiment that things should be made a little easier out there for businesses like the florist consultant to come in without having to spend whatever they spent to apply for this application this evening and go through this process. But what I was thinking is that rather than diving into an issue like this, that we should let staff focus on the comp plan.
Also
And
an
then once the
appreciated sentiment.
comp plan is done, because otherwise, it seems like we'll keep putting the comp plan off, and before long, there'll be other people like Sam, who was heavily invested in the discussion, and now he's apparently gone. And we'll have to, it'll be more difficult to get the comp plan finished, so I guess my own opinion is I would rather have staff focus on comp plan first. And of course, we have to deal with any applicants that come in, but then, and only then, tackle these issues.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that approach either. Maybe what we do is revisit this in 3 months, because I think during that 3-month period, there'll probably be some comp plan related activity, and, you know, we won't lose sight of it, but I don't have a problem with that, George, just from a timing perspective.
Okay, just my thoughts. Obviously, it's a group decision, so.
I had a thought about this whole process. Would it be possible, like, when the brewery came to us, and the medical building that came to us before anything was put in writing and we gave our thoughts and so forth, would it be possible for staff to pick and choose a florist and say, this is going to be in the CBD district, have them come here before they even apply for our application, tell us what they want to do, and give our recommendations that this should be a permitted use? Like we did for the medical building, we carved out the parking and the, something else. And maybe we should be doing that for these easy businesses that want to come into the L1, so we don't have to go through this process.
That's the approach you could take too.
And then eventually get to, and that'll keep adding appropriate items without having to spend a lot of time.
Yeah, so maybe the approach we take is to adopt Elliot's recommendation in the short term, if it works out from a staff perspective, and then when the time comes, we'll address it more globally. But I think we'd like to make it as efficient as we can, both for the prospective petitioners as well as for the staff and the commission generally.
You know, that's so true, because just even reading the previous minutes through so many years, what did they say? Simplify? You know, how do we make it easier? How do we give the tax break for the village? So I just read that word over and over again. I felt like that was, and I think you bring up a good point, that could easily be one step towards
Making it easier.
simplifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that something we need to vote on, or?
No, I think we've got your direction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe just a consensus and,
Mm-hmm.
anything else from a staff perspective?
I think that's about it. So at your next meeting, we do know a couple items that'll be coming forward to you, most likely. One, similar to this, there will be a fitness facility in the L1 district that's already filed an application. They're in a multi-tenant space, but they're a bit over that 500 square feet we established a few months back. There'll also be a petition forthcoming for 101 Waukegan Road. So that's currently, their major tenant is the dialysis facility. They're expanding their parking into that back 50 feet of the Waukegan Road setback, opened up by one of your recent text amendments late last year for the Cementbo building.
So, I'm sorry, they're doing what?
So you remember last year, in part for the Smedbo building and the Waukegan Road corridor study and so
They
forth.
want to open up that.
Yeah, we opened up that back 50 feet. So they're taking advantage of that. But there's a couple edge issues that may require variations in addition to that.
They want to put parking, or they want to expand the building?
Parking. So they've got parking, they've got a nice big swale, they're proposing some landscaping. But there's a couple variations they may need. But that's all we see on the agenda right now. What's that, Sam Badger? No, there is no update on Stonebridge, and there's no update on Block 3. That would be my report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cole. Commissioners' report. Any questions or concerns or comments from the commissioners? All right. Mr. Schuster has advised that we can proceed with respect to a public hearing on behalf of the petitioner. And I think that would be the efficient way to go. We don't have an explanation as to why the petitioner is not here, but maybe if you could, Mr. Cole, read into the record agenda item number 5, and as long as we're procedurally correct, we'll go forward.
Yeah, so the rule is, I mean, if it's a text amendment, that's within your prerogative. There isn't a burden whatsoever on the applicant to present. It's more of a policy decision of what you think is best. If you think you can or want to render a decision on that, a recommendation one way or the other, you could certainly do so without them being here, and you have what's their application before you and everything that's in it. In terms of if you decide that you want to do a special use, the burden is on the applicant, but again, if you think the burden is met based on what is before you, then you don't need to have them here to present. So it's really your call if you want to proceed and make any recommendation.
Good, thank you very much. Let the record reflect that we have adopted and incorporated by reference the petitioner's filings, and I guess we can proceed to perhaps discuss the merits of a possible text amendment and/or special use permit, and see whether or not the committee has a consensus, and then we can go forward from there. So, any comments, Ms. Danley?
I don't have any comments other than I would encourage that we move forward to, again, simplify and allow a business of her stature and standard to have access. So how we can simplify and incorporate that into one of the special use line items, I would encourage that, but
Would your preference be a text amendment or special use permit?
well, I would do special use permit. I guess I would do special use permit, allow that versus the text amendment. But I don't know, maybe you need to clarify for me really the difference between.
Yeah, maybe Glenn or Ben can go through the difference.
Yeah, so there's essentially, there's 2 action steps tonight, right? So right now, you can't have a florist in this district at all. If you were to allow one in either case, you'd be recommending a text amendment that says we go into the use table, we either add a P for permitted or an S for special. So if it's P for permitted, it's an applicant can ordinarily just go straight into that space. They don't have to come before this body. They may go before the Architectural Board of Review if there's exterior improvements. Again, they could choose a site and locate there relatively quickly in the future. If it was a special use permit, typically, conceptually in zoning, that's reserved for uses that maybe have a risk of
Right.
not matching with their adjacent uses or having some negative externalities, so noise, heat, glare, or just incompatibilities, traffic. And so anytime someone were to open that type of business, they would have to come here for a special use permit. So there's some additional time, some additional fees built in.
I
before
didn't
they
see
can
anything that needed the special use permit. I mean, there was nothing that was going to cause congestion of traffic, any lights, any other conditions that was going to cause a hardship for anyone else, even around her building that she was going to occupy. So I could certainly not see doing a special use. I think a permitted and textbook case would be my recommendation, for sure.
Okay.
And I guess one of the general issues that we have to contemplate is how do you define florist? And obviously, we're familiar with the retail florists. In this particular petition, it's a little more unique. It's, I guess, technically retail, but it's not people coming in, day out, buying limited amounts of flowers. And, but just so we're aware of that florist could be defined rather broadly.
Like she does, she describes as a non-retail floral business,
Yeah.
so.
So you have the ability, if you want, with a text amendment, you can make the text amendment florist and leave it open and broad to include those who are in the retail as well as non-retail side of the business. If you so desire, you could define it, the text amendment to be, florist, not primarily engaged in retail activities. So it's up to you from a policy perspective on what you think is best. Just know that while she is describing the business as non-retail, nothing would stop Pete's Flowers from coming and opening a retail shop, if you make the amendment to be florist. So just keep that in mind.
So in the CBD district, florist is allowed.
Yes, it's permitted as of right.
So we've already discussed the fact that we would like to move the CBD permitted uses to the L1. So number one is I think we should do a text amendment. Number two, I think it should be an open florist rather than a wholesale or retail florist, would be my recommendation.
Glenn, for this particular application, could you clarify to the best of your ability what the business actually is? Because when I read the minutes today, after reading the application, I saw that former member Badger had commented that he described it as a floral consultant.
That's what it looks
And
like, sir.
Did she use the word consultant?
No,
in there?
so it's a meeting office, assemblage, and a storage
Yeah,
facility.
and do you know
Sure.
for sure? Because I was hoping to get a clarification, because I was struggling to understand if she was a floral consultant, why she wasn't permitted as of right, because we do allow general offices, we do allow the assemblance of goods, assembling flowers, we do allow the storage of goods, the package of goods. They're all listed as permitted uses now, and so I was trying to figure out what she had told staff that led us down the road to thinking we couldn't let this business in already.
Probably because she said florist.
Because there's consulting business, a civil engineer could open up an office out there and be a consultant. It's not listed as civil engineering consultant, but I would assume we would let the person in under general offices, so I'm trying to understand
Sure.
what did she say that said, nope, she can't go in under general office?
Okay, let me break that question up a little bit. So first, I do have a note from Sam I'll read a little later, more generally, kind of when we're through the petitioner comments, but he did share some comments on this. The second would be, as far as the character of the business, what I understand is similar to what they've spelled out in their application, that this is, there'd be a few things going on here. So she would bring clients here and discuss their needs with them. She would have product there. She would perhaps use this as a storage space and a preparation space. And then perhaps, these would then be delivered to weddings or to all sorts of different uses off premises.
So is it the delivery aspect then that, because everything
Well,
else you
there's
said
people,
sound-
yeah, so there's a couple things. There's a delivery aspect, there's a, guests visiting aspect, there's a few things. And making our interpretation and looking towards what the building commissioner's reasoning was, there's sort of this very general idea that when you're interpreting things, right, you start with, specific instances trump general instances, right? So if we say that merchandising stores are okay, but perhaps gun stores are not okay, you would look at the specific instance before you get to the general instance. So in this case, we have a provision that says florists aren't allowed in the L1 district. And it has a SIC code reference that says, hey, a florist might be a wholesaling florist, it might be a retail florist, it could be all of these different things that fit into this category we've set out. So it's just sort of our hands are more or less.
Okay, because the florist is listed as a not permitted use?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it's only permitted in
Just
the
that.
central business district.
Well,
And
given
it's
all
not
that,
shown
then-
on the
oh.
table because it's
Yeah.
just not in the L1 district.
Well, given all that, then I'd be highly in favor of a text amendment, because I generally view, given the way that all the past bodies that have discussed this issue, we're opening up the industrial park to retail, and a floral business, if it meets all the other requirements of the zoning code, if there's adequate parking, because staff is still gonna do the analysis to make sure there's adequate parking on site.
Yes, sir.
They're not gonna be allowed to store goods outside, so it's not this giant wholesale floral business that has open storage to the sky, because it's not allowed. So the type of florist that would be coming in here, I don't view that as being impactful at all to the light industrial district, and would be a good use. It would get people down into our district and out towards our other stores in the area. So I'm in favor of recommending a text amendment that would allow florist operations.
I mean, honestly, I think a florist operation is already happening at, like Designs by Jody is a florist that's, I guess, it's in like Bluff, but she has a service very similar to Katie Ford, in that she does weddings and special events, and people come in to talk about their things, and they happen to say, oh, I would like an arrangement for my friend, or can I possibly pick up something else? And there is a transaction of a purchase. And it's not necessarily them lined up to do that, but that takes place in these facilities. And I don't think that we should be so specific in the wording that we don't allow that transaction, so to speak, to take place, because it will, and it does inevitably in all of the consultant, distributors, wholesale. They'll have that capability.
Certainly. And I would note, for clarity, that's actually in Green Oaks, but certainly nearby
Green
business.
Oaks, right, okay. Thank you.
Member Murray?
Mr. Chairman, I also support, and it's been a little hard to follow the rest of the conversation, but I think I followed the gist of it, and I'm also supportive of a text amendment-based approach to the situation.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess from a clarity perspective, obviously, the petitioner would have flowers delivered to the facility at periodic intervals. Do we have any idea how long the flowers would be stored there? Would it be just a matter of days and then shipped to the customer? I mean, I'm not opposed to if they were stored for a couple weeks or whatever the time frame is for storage of flowers. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but just for clarity.
It would be conjecture for me to answer that, unfortunately.
But your understanding is it
perishable
is all
goods.
indoors?
Yes, all indoors. It's just a multi-tenant space. There's a floor plan provided in your packet showing just this small tenant area they would take out of this multi-unit building.
Yeah, it's a tiny space.
Any further discussion?
Well, just a sidebar item to that, I did go out and walk around the facility today, and I'm wondering if, I was wondering if staff couldn't, maybe under the property maintenance code, approach the building owner about the tenant signs are both badly peeling and very old, and while they're getting a new tenant and putting someone in, I was gonna ask the applicant if they'd had any discussion along those lines, because they are getting pretty run down and badly peeling. And then there's been some sort of storage building erected outside on the 41 frontage, which, just was wondering what that about. It looks nicer than anything else out there, but, just as a sidebar comment, that if maybe these issues could be looked at separately, not, for what it's worth.
I've made note of
Keep
that.
our,
and we'll
because we
bring
want
it
things
along.
looking nice out there, and,
Thank you, Member Russell. I guess, as you are aware, we've got a couple different options. One of them is to go down the possible permitted use route. One of them is to go down the possible special use route, or one of them is to deny either of those alternatives. So do we have a motion? We're a recommending body in this particular scenario.
I recommend a motion to make it a florist a permitted use.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could we have a vote, please?
Certainly. Member Danley,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Murray,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Chair Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Last agenda item is motion to adjourn, barring any further discussion.
I have one thing before we go.
Yes.
So I think I, at the last meeting, mentioned this, and I'll mention it again as just a friendly reminder. If you don't want to go to work on May 2nd, you are welcome to play hooky and come to our biennial seminar up at Ravinia Festival. So for those who've been before, we'd love to have you again. And if you haven't been to one of our biennial seminars, it's an all-day training and educational seminar of all sorts of things that are going to cover a lot of the topics that you deal with: zoning and development issues, affordable housing issues, the status of the law. So we'd love to have you. So if you have not already RSVP'd, please do, and we'd love to see you there. And if you have RSVP'd no, you can always change that and make it a yes. So we hope to see you there.
Who's replacing?
Thank you,
Sam?
Mr. Schuster.
Who's replacing Sam?
Not known at this time. So, however, I hear if you need a sick note, you might have a fellow plan commissioner that could help you with that. If you're playing hooky. Yeah. Flat joke, sorry. When we know, we'll make sure to share that with the group. And also, I expect Sam may be honored by the village board for his service at some point in the future. When that comes around, I'll make sure to share scheduling of that with you as well.
Great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Go to
Thank you
sleep.
very much, Mr. Member Murray,
Yeah,
for
go to sleep.